Good evening, everybody, from here in South Africa. But I trust that it is morning where some of you are. I think 9 a.m. on the West Coast in LA, etc., and 12 p.m. in New York and on the East Coast. So it's with great pleasure for me to welcome everybody to this webinar. I would like to also extend my very warm welcome to our Rector and Vice Chancellor, Professor Wim de Villiers, who's also agreed to join us this evening here in South Africa. Welcome. And of course, Sarah Archer, our fundraising director, who will also be part of the webinar and have a conversation with Prof. Wim shortly. And of course, welcome, Sarah, and thank you very much to our keynote speaker, Josh Romisher. Josh, welcome. And thank you so much for giving up your time to be with us this evening. Here in South Africa, of course, but we know that our alumni and our friends of the university and our donors are across the world, and particularly I see that people are joining us regularly. I recognize some names, our colleagues in Calgary. Stephen, I see you there. Welcome all the way in Canada. I see colleagues and friends of the university in New York. Welcome to all of you, and we're so pleased that you're joining us. I think we will have guests joining as the call is continuing. So I will simply ask and give you a few house rules, colleagues, to ensure we all have a smooth experience on this call. Can I request firstly that everybody switch off your camera, and that will also facilitate the proceedings in terms of connectivity. And also, if you could ensure that you mute your microphone, that will also help to ensure that we have a good conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sean Stewart. I'm the Alumni and Donor Relations Manager, and this is an opportunity we're presenting in this new normal, as we keep referring to it, with lockdown and the COVID pandemic. My colleague Sarah and I were discussing what we would have planned for our North American colleagues and hub. And of course, at this stage, we've had to pivot. There's a key word I'm sure we will hear from Josh. And we basically are doing a lot of our engagement opportunities in this online space. So this is all new for all of us, as well as for you. So I do hope that you will bear with us as more of our guests are joining the call. So without taking too much time, just also to mention that for those who are joining a bit later on, please keep your camera off and your mic muted. There will be an opportunity to ask questions to Josh, and we will use the chat facility. There's a chat section on this platform. If you could type your questions in there, I will address these with Josh as we go along when he does his presentation. So we will stick to an hour strictly. So we're now at 6:05 South African time. I suspect 9:05 in LA. What would it be? 12:05 in New York or DC. So we will stick to an hour, and we do hope to have a fruitful discussion with everybody. So at this stage, I think I can hand over to my colleague who you're seeing on the screen, Sarah Archer, who will do some introductory remarks with Prof. Wim, and then we will take it from there. So Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Sean. Well, our main focus today is Josh Romisher and the work of the Launch Lab, but we thought it would be a very nice opportunity for us to lead into that with some discussion or to hear a bit of an update from Prof. Wim de Villiers about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on higher education. So the head of our university, Prof. Wim de Villiers, is the perfect person to be giving us that update, seeing as he's been leading us leading us and the university through the crisis and in the response to the crisis, and also because he plays a broader role in the higher education sector. So he is the Vice Chair of University South Africa, he's a board member of the Association of Commonwealth Universities, and he's a member of the Global University Leaders Forum. I will be asking Prof. Wim two questions, just two questions. But let me first remind those who know him and mention to those who don't know him that Prof. Wim has a strong affinity with North America. It's a region that most of you are from, and he lived there in Kentucky for 18 years. So he has a great affinity with North America. And the second thing I'd like to point out is that Prof. Wim is a Vice Chancellor who walks the talk in moments of crisis and need like this one. He feels very strongly about the well-being of our students, to the extent that he often puts his body on the line for them. He likes to participate in cycle rides and marathons, and has done many very recently, including the UK cycle race. We now need to find him a marathon or a cycle to participate in the name of Stellenbosch in North America. So do get back to me if you have any ideas on that front. But moving straight into our two questions, Prof. Wim, greetings. You're on? Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Sarah. Thanks for the opportunity.
Good. So, Prof, this is your second term. Your second term started in April, the beginning of April, and really very much coincided with the COVID virus picking up steam. How has the crisis affected higher education, and how has Stellenbosch University responded to this crisis?
Yeah, thank you, and it's nice interacting with you all in this way. So, yeah, COVID-19 has had a massive impact on higher education across the globe, like on all aspects of society. So we suspended contact tuition from the end of March, the 26th of March or so, and institutions, higher education institutions generally have closed down. So we really reduced everything at the university to two overriding priorities, and that is firstly to ensure the successful completion of the 2020 academic year, and then also to safeguard the long-term sustainability of our institution. So we had to implement a host of operational initiatives and activities. It's really stretched our human capacity and resources. We're not through this crisis yet by any means, but I think we've actually weathered the storm reasonably well. I really do, and I'm very I'm glad I can report that. So three areas very quickly that we did. We're starting with learning, teaching, and learning. So, and that is we want to keep our university going. We have to deliver well-qualified graduates. So we've had the systems in place for some time already. So we were able to rapidly switch to emergency remote teaching, learning, and assessment, which is commonly referred to as online learning. But we did not want to leave anyone behind, and to bridge that digital divide, we made available more than 1,700 laptops and mobile data to students who needed that for connectivity. And lots of credit to everyone for lots of hard work to make it work. Our employees, both the academic staff and professional administrative supports, services staff, and our students. It's not easy to switch to online mode overnight. It's easier said than done. I still have the honor to teach a few lectures in gastroenterology annually, and I had to do that to our in online fashion to our second year medical students. So we're getting the hang of it, and just as well that we're managing to do this, had to do this in a span of 2 to 3 months, because there's no doubt that e-learning is here to stay. And as we speak, online exams are actually ongoing, and we're able to complete the first semester successfully. Technological innovations have been threatening to disrupt traditional learning and teaching in universities for quite a while now. And I think we have irrevocably crossed that Rubicon now. It's exciting, but it's also a bit scary. So that's teaching and learning. Secondly, what about research and innovation? So when the coronavirus struck, our researchers got stuck into help. There are many, many exciting examples there. We've deployed robots at Tygerberg Hospital to allow specialists to do remote ward rounds. And the publicity around that brought the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation on board with a grant that's now enabling us to digitize the whole of the ICU so that we can go paperless, thereby minimizing physical contact and reducing spread of the virus. There are many other examples of research and innovation. A large multi-university study led by Stellenbosch University to track the socio-economic impacts of the pandemic. I mean, we think that this is going to increase unemployment even further than the very severe figures that we have here. It's now reported at 30%, and the predictions are that it's possibly going to go up to 38, 39% or so. And then social impact. The third of that is, and I'm very proud of how the whole Stellenbosch University community has rallied around, and also at a local level. A Division of Social Impact collaborated with various partners to support the municipality and the provincial departments. We co-established Stellenbosch Unite, a collaborative movement that distributes food to vulnerable households. So I think that Stellenbosch University really has risen to the occasion across the board. There's been a good response to our appeal to support the Stellenbosch University Solidarity Fund. There are 5 key areas where staff, students, alumni, donors, and friends of the university are helping us to make a difference. And these 5 areas are digital access. I talked about the laptops, food security, support for healthcare workers. Fourthly, support for our research and innovation response to the crisis, and the community impact. So this is a way for you to get involved in our struggle against COVID-19 in South Africa, and to help us address needs on campus. And we would certainly appreciate all contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Vim. And if anyone wants to ask any questions about that slide, feel free. Sean and my email addresses were there, or pop us a note in the chat. Thank you, Prof. Vim, for the update, and good to know that our university is pulling its weight, supported by members of our large extended family all over the world. Last question before we hand over to Josh. Is the university gearing up to reopen anytime soon? What lies ahead for us?
Yes, slowly but surely. Easy does it, safety first. But you must bear in mind that the pandemic has not even peaked yet in South Africa. Yeah, Cape Town is considered, or the Western Cape was considered the epicenter. It's now seemingly moving to Gauteng. So numbers are still rising. We have to be very careful. I think we are realizing that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And higher education institutions are now permitted to invite a maximum of 33% of their students back to their campuses under the Alert Level 3 regulations issued in terms of the national state of disaster. So what does it mean for us? We have 32,000 students in total, so we can bring back about 11,000. And so we're inviting specific students to return step by step. Firstly, the final year clinical students were the first to return, and they did that in May already. From the 1st of July, it'll be selected postgraduate students, and then from the 27th of July, at the start of the second semester, selected undergraduate students. But this will all be subject to strict health-related protocols to prevent the spread. What about the rest of the year? If South Africa goes down to level 2, we may theoretically invite up to 66% of students back then. But it won't be easy to do so, either safely or practically. So it is possible that in some modules, actually the entire academic year will be completed online. So we find ourselves in uncharted waters, and we really have to steer a careful course to get through the storm. But we're in this for the long haul, and it's always worthwhile to reflect and remember that universities are institutions for the ages, and we have to think far ahead, and we have to change the way we have been doing things as required by new circumstances. And that is why it really links so nicely to this talk today by Josh, focusing on entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial thinking that can assist universities to be more innovative, and because innovative universities, together with other role players, can really assist society to turn problems into opportunities. And that is why we're excited about. And in the past, if you think about it, that students were prepared for a specific career, and graduates would spend their entire working lives at one or two companies. But these days, we're now preparing young people for professions that do not even exist yet. And entrepreneurship training is and must be part of the solution for this, because there was a great book by Holden Thorne and Buck Goldstein, and I quote, they said, entrepreneurship supplies the spark, the passion, and the commitment that inspire creative people to come together and achieve extraordinary things. And that's exactly where the Stellenbosch University Launch Lab comes in. It functions as a business accelerator, boosting entrepreneurship on the campus through network opportunities, mentorship, affordable rental rates for startup companies by both students and staff, as well as external parties. So Josh Romisher is here to tell us more. I'm going to stop there. I'm glad to have you on board, Josh, and thanks for the talk today, and thank you for the opportunity to update you all about events at Stellenbosch University. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. And if there are any questions from anyone around some of the topics that Prof. Wim has mentioned, please do feel free to put them in the chat, or again to email Sean or I about those, and we'll respond to them in the next day or so. Prof. Wim has another engagement. He's a busy man, so he's off onto his next engagement. So cheers to Prof. Wim, and back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Prof. Wim, for that update, and welcome to our guests who have subsequently joined us. We've just had the introductory remarks with an update on what's been happening here at Stellenbosch University, and Prof. Wim has given us some great insights there. So we really are appreciative of your time, Prof. Wim. Thank you so much. We're now going to head on to the next part of the program, which of course I'm sure many of you have been looking forward to. And the topic under discussion today, of course, is entrepreneurial mindsets for the new normal, how we can use entrepreneurial techniques to thrive in the new world order. And I think Josh is probably the best person, and if I have to say that myself, I will do so, to actually give us this input, as Josh has spent, over 6 years in the African solar home system sector as a former CFO of Phoenix International and a vice president of corporate finance at Zola Electric. Josh is a serial entrepreneur, and I hope you won't mind me saying that, with an array of ventures, including a boutique investment bank in New York, a solar irrigation startup in India, a frozen yogurt franchise in San Francisco. So you can see the global links there. And of course, his mission of creating impact at scale and his passion for this environment led him to the distributed solar sector here in Africa. Josh is driven by the opportunity to provide hardworking people across the globe with the platform to put their skills to work in effecting positive social change, and I think that's quite important. So Josh, of course, is our CEO of the SU Launch Lab, and we're so delighted to have you with us at Stellenbosch University, leading the efforts of the Launch Lab. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to you, Josh, just to quickly say to those joining the call perhaps later, please, if you could switch off your camera and mute your microphone. So we'd like to have just the speaker, Josh, on screen, and that will facilitate the call. So microphones off, muted, please, and your camera off. Over to you, Josh.
Great. Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Sarah and Prof. Wim. It's great to be here today, and Really appreciate everyone speaking so passionately about entrepreneurism, about really trying to find what I believe is opportunity within all the adversity. So let me share my screen. There we go. Okay, so hopefully everyone can now see that. And so I'm going to take about 25 minutes today to talk a little bit about entrepreneurial mindsets for this new normal. And I really do believe these entrepreneurial techniques can help us all really reframe the crisis. And again, adversity is opportunity. You're going to hear me say it a lot. I think my team at Launch Lab is probably tired of hearing me say it at this point, but I firmly believe it. So we'll take about 25 minutes today to go through this. And then I want to give ourselves at least 15 minutes for Q&A. And that's really where I would love to hear your thoughts, your views, your questions. I think that would be great. It was a great intro by Sean, but I do really appreciate talking to my North American friends. As you can probably tell, I'm from the USA, born in actually in New Mexico, lived in Philadelphia, lived in New York, San Francisco. So I've been all over the United States. As Sean mentioned, I've been living in Africa for the last 6 years, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. My wife, myself, and hopefully you won't hear my 13-month-old son as he's running around before bed. We came to South Africa about a year ago and have fallen in love with this wonderful country, and specifically the Stellenbosch region. But I have a pretty diverse career. It never makes sense when you're looking forward, but when you connect the dots looking backwards, it does seem to make some sense. And the real sense is this idea of impact at scale. So I spent 11 years at Credit Suisse and debt capital markets, really understanding how one of the most liquid, very large markets within structured products, mortgage-backed securities work, so I can understand how high finance works. I've been a serial entrepreneur now for 12 years. And in getting back to this idea of adversity as opportunity, my first startup actually was in 2008 during the financial crisis. Saw a massive opportunity with a huge dislocation within financial markets. Bought a broker-dealer license with 5 employees of Bear Stearns that quickly found themselves broke and on the street. And that was an incredibly successful venture. In some ways, probably the most successful I've had in my 7 startups. So again, adversity is opportunity. This is how we reframe that. It's the techniques we use to really find and unlock that opportunity in these crisis moments. I said I have spent the last 6 years in sub-Saharan Africa helping scale 2 clean energy companies. I'm very, very passionate about impact at scale, very passionate about clean energy. And I think the African continent is just absolutely ripe for disruption in terms of how we really not only clean energy, but how we bring social goods to the public sector and the interplay between the public and private sector. At Stellenbosch University Launch Lab, we are a university-backed incubator. So we are effectively owned by the university. The university owns Innovis, which is its tech transfer partner. Innovis commercializes and brings a lot of the intellectual property out of the university, and then we're owned by Innovis. So we sit within the sphere of Stellenbosch University. We're able to access the amazing people of the university, the intellectual property, but we are a smaller piece of a big institution, and that's really necessary in order to be nimble and agile in this entrepreneurial world. We really sit at the front of innovation and of company building. Our mission is to transform seemingly impossible ideas into world-shaping businesses. And I think 2 things really stand out right there. One is that we're at that 0 to 1. We're at that seemingly impossible. Is this an idea? Is it a business? We want to be there helping people take this idea and transform it into something that can become a business and can actually be world-shaping. So you'll see the different sectors that we focus on. So if you think about Stellenbosch University Launch Lab, we're working both with the university, with local entrepreneurs and with international entrepreneurs to turn their ideas into businesses at that very upstream moment within the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And how do we do that? Right now, we're focused on really 5 different verticals, and then I think of one as a horizontal. So we're very much focused on agri-sciences, engineering, climate, medical, and then really infusing the entire varsity with entrepreneurism. I think it's critically important that students have an opportunity to be entrepreneurs while they're at university. There is a feeling of sometimes a lack of risk-taking in the South African context, and it's very understandable. But what a great opportunity while students are at varsity to plug into a startup, to go to a design thinking workshop, to work with the Launch Lab team to get a feel for what entrepreneurism really feels like. It's basically a no-risk proposition. If it works and you have a great time, then maybe we've planted the seed. that you may become not an employee, but an employer in the future. If it doesn't work, then that's fine. You did nothing lost, but a little bit of time and effort, and you've learned something for that. And then we also think of really this horizontal as the USB and the School for Data Science and Computational Thinking. Every business in the world right now, in my personal opinion, you're going to need an engineer, you're going to need a business person, and you're going to need someone who understands data. So we're trying to go across campus and pull together these diverse different groups to be able to form new companies. I was fortunate to go to Stanford for my master's degree at the Graduate School of Business. And what I loved so much there was basically pulling together diverse, multi-collaborative groups of people and giving them a hard problem. Put a medical student, an engineer, and a business student in a room, give them a hard problem and see what comes out of that. And a lot of great things happen when you have that cross collaboration. So at Launch Lab, we really are working very closely with Innovis, very closely with the university to bring all these different groups to bear with problems that we think are really critical to solve on the African continent and hopefully internationally as well. So just a little bit of background there, but I do want to take this time to think about the new normal. And it's really good, I think, as we enter this new, and I think Vim said it very well, it's a marathon. I think we're all realizing this new normal isn't the crisis mode that we were in for a month or two. It really is this new normal of what is the world going to look like for probably could be the foreseeable future of how this whole thing is operating. And so when I think of that, there's certain adjectives that come to mind, and some are negative. It's ambiguous, it's volatile, it's frightening, it can be disruptive to our lives, but there's also positives. I actually get very excited about things that are ambiguous, about things that I don't know, and the new normal of what can be. It's exciting, it's opportunistic, and again, it's disruptive. And if you think about all these words, ambiguous, exciting, and disruptive has almost become a cliche. I start to think about being an entrepreneur. Welcome to being at a startup. So whether you want to think about Silicon Valley in the geographic terms, or actually the show as well, a lot of these things about disruption, about innovation, about ambiguity, they are embedded in entrepreneurism. So when we look at the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, the Mark Zuckerbergs, they all have in some way embraced these ambiguous, the ambiguous nature of startup business in order to thrive. So I think we can learn a lot from those lessons. A lot of the things that you need to be a great entrepreneur are also the things you need in order to reframe this crisis into opportunity. So I'm going to go through a couple of these right now. And these are things that I'm happy to send this presentation afterwards as well, because I think one of the biggest things is surrounding yourself with material and thoughts. And what do you talk about? Who do you listen to? What podcasts are on your iPhone? And that really matters. So when you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, when you're thinking about battling through a crisis, it's about building grit. And there's an incredible book by Angela Duckworth called Grit. And she defines grit as this intersection of passion plus perseverance. And grit can be something that we grow from the inside. It can also be something that we seek externally. And I love this concept. There's the great saying that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Well, greatness is actually just doing ordinary things every day. Every day, just coming to work and doing a little bit more. And the incremental that you can put towards building your grit, the incremental you can put towards putting yourself out there and dealing with ambiguity in a different way and forcing yourself to be all right with the volatility of this new normal, the more you're going to grow and the more that it becomes normal. So I would say Grit is an incredible book to read. There's a very good TED Talk. I'd also highly recommend a book called Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, a Stanford professor, that really starts to think about what is the mindset you take. Do you feel like you're fully formed and therefore you can't make mistakes, you can't try? That would be a fixed mindset. Or do you really come with a growth mindset that you can always improve, you can always seek new outcomes, you can always get better? Very, very great book with a number of case studies in there as well to give you real life examples and some sociological input on how to think about growth mindset. Secondly, I really, really enjoy, embrace, and use design thinking. And design thinking really is a decision-making technique. You're going to hear in startup world, a lot of people talk about lean startup methodology, about minimum viable product. There's a lot of different ways to come at a structured way of making a decision. I think design thinking is incredible, and you can use it in everything from starting a business to picking where you want to live in the world or thinking about a new job opportunity, whatever it may be. But as it said, it's an iterative process, and it helps you understand the user, whether the user is yourself or your customer. It helps you challenge assumptions, redefine problems, and identify alternative strategies and solutions. So what I want to focus on here is that first bubble of empathize. So the first step in design thinking is to build empathy with your user. So this is doing things like having discussions, taking surveys, going and talking to people and listening and really asking why. Ask why 5 times until you really get to the heart of the matter. And I think whether this is, again, for starting your own business or even thinking about having a discussion with your significant other to say, am I comfortable with the lifestyle that my job or whatever else, getting down to that core being of why are we doing things, that empathy building is really, really important. And again, this is a process that you can run through with really anything that will help you make better decisions in a structured way. The reason that I really like it is it helps you reframe things into challenges. And you think of this as a creative design-based process. Another great book is called Creative Confidence by David Kelly, who's the founder of IDEO. Highly recommend that one as well. But what if we take our lives and really think about them as a design space? And you're reframing this from a difficult, adverse situation into a design challenge. And all you're doing then is figuring out your users, generating a point of view, defining your design space, and then trying to find the optimal solution within that design space. The last 3 nodes here between ideate, prototype, and test effectively create a cycle. So you want to put something out in the market. You want to prototype with that thing that's in the market, which many times is a minimum viable product. You get feedback, and then you keep that cycle going. So you live your life in beta. And this is good for software. It's good for hardware. It's good for your life too. If you can get out there and test new methods and test new assumptions, and then take that feedback from the market and then continue to iterate, I think it helps you make better decisions. And then you become user focused. Besides the fact that is the best way to build a company is really listening to your customer, insisting on going back to the market to get more insights. It's actually been proven scientifically that in times of crisis, the more that you can focus on other people, the more that you can do things for other people, the better you're going to feel. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. And then I think this is a massive opportunity. And this is coming from someone who spent 11 years at a massive bank, lived through the financial crisis and saw, I think there's this perception of risk. And there's a great podcast by Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, who basically says that most entrepreneurs, all they're really doing is assessing risk in a different way. Someone thinks this thing is very risky. As an entrepreneur, either you have some earned insight or you have some intuition that the market is mispricing risk. And so I don't think it's as risky as someone else to take this chance. So this is the question I ask a lot. So which career option has the greater risk? You're a middle manager at a large multinational company. All of a sudden COVID hits and this company's revenue dries up. And the company says, you know what, in order to make our quarterly earnings, in order to whatever it may be, to keep our stock price high, we need to lay off a quarter or a fifth of our workforce. And all of a sudden, you're just a number. Whether you really produce or whether you've been at the company for however many years, you become a number. And there's 25,000 numbers who have to go from that company. And this is what I saw in my experience on Wall Street during the financial crisis. You can cut out the fat, but then you start cutting into bone and it just becomes a number. Or if you're at a startup, you go to a startup, you're working as employee number 8, the startup has 12 months of runway, you know your fixed burn, you know how long you have in order to figure out product market fit before you run out of cash, which is really what startups are. It's basically figuring out, can we keep the lights on long enough until we generate a product, get it to market and get paid for it and start to scale the business. But it's something you really find you're passionate about, you're working with a team of people who you know and trust. And by the way, it's very easy to pivot a relatively new or relatively agile business model. And there's techniques like design thinking and lean startup methodology that really help you do this. So this is where I ask people, like, where's the real risk? Working at a big company has a lot of upside. It also has a lot of stability in good times. And maybe most startups do go bankrupt and most startups don't go anywhere. But I think in this situation, it's a good opportunity to step back and think about that idea of risk and also think about where does your passion lie? And that really is my fourth point here. And most of the things you're going to find in entrepreneurs is this passion, is this dedication to pursuing something that matters so much to you. And for me, it's about building businesses. It's about helping others, about giving other people the opportunity. As a white male American, I do understand that I won the genetic lottery. And so a lot of my work over the last decade has been trying to provide that opportunity to people who just simply didn't. So if we step back and really think about where do you find passion in your work, maybe the crisis is a great inflection point. Maybe it's a great opportunity to step back and say, is this thing that I'm doing, am I perceiving risk the right way? Is it something that I really find my passion in? I find it fascinating that a third of our lives, not even waking lives, a third of our lives are spent at work. So if you're spending that much time at work, are you loving what you're doing? Are you finding meaning and purpose in it? Does it push you and challenge you? And I'm not going to romanticize entrepreneurism. I did own a frozen yogurt shop in San Francisco. I did have to go buy fruit at like 4 a.m. and run that to the shop before I went to my banking job. I did have to clean the bathrooms at 10 p.m. on a Friday night. I don't think that is really shown enough. It's not the Zuckerbergs all the time. It's not the romantic side of Elon Musk. It is hard work, but it's building something, and it's something that you can find hopefully a lot of purpose and meaning in. So I think generally entrepreneurs follow their passion. So how do you put this into practice? What are some techniques to start applying this to your daily lives? So coming back to the book Grit, which again defines grit as having passion and then persevering to make that passion happen. It says in sum, no matter the domain, the highly successful had a kind of ferocious determination that played out in 2 ways. First of all, they were resilient and hardworking. And second, they knew what they wanted in a very, very deep way. So you have to have that determination and you have to have direction. So I think that's really, really interesting to step back, especially in a crisis where there is a lot of volatility. You don't always control your fate. It might feel like you're being blown in the winds of whatever's happening during the crisis, but to know that you need to be resilient, to know that you need to keep your head down and keep working hard, where others are going to step back and say, oh, woe is me. It's an opportunity to put your head down and really get ahead. And then if you know what you want, this is a massive opportunity of a dislocation in the market, a dislocation in the way things are being done. The education model is a great example. I think if you would ask Vim how long he thought it would take to turn the entire university into a virtual classroom, under normal circumstances, that could have taken years. The university was able to do it in 6 weeks. It's incredible. And I think that's going to be a great, great thing for the university in the long run. I believe that these moments of dislocation offer opportunities. And if we know where we want to go and we're determined to get there, then we can get there. So a couple of just pieces that I would say is, one is have an opportunity to step back. I think we all find ourselves a little bit more free time, especially during the lockdown. Now that we're getting out of it, the design space has limited, right? We can't do as many things as we wanted to. So take that time. What are you surrounding yourself with? I love listening to podcasts from entrepreneurs. I love reading entrepreneurial books. I like reading non-entrepreneurial books too, but what are you surrounding yourself with to help grow that idea that opportunity is adversity? Because what we surround ourselves with really does dictate how we think. And then do the work. I'm a big fan of writing, just putting down and saying, hey, what did I learn today? What am I grateful for? At the same time, what am I passionate about? And there are some great techniques. If you do want to enter into the startup world, I very much want to say there's different ways to do it. You don't have to be a founder. I actually am not a good founder. I'm pretty good at taking something that's a bit formed, and then taking it to the next level, building the processes for scale. So I think of myself as being okay at the 0 to 1. I really love the 1 to 100. And then frankly, when it's at the 100 phase and it wants to go be managerial and go big, that's not exactly where I enjoy. So I've done the work to understand, where do I fit into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and just giving you the frame of reference that there are different ways, different stages of company to enter that may meet your needs and meet what you want to do at a startup. And then it's about growing your perseverance. So if we think about this as passion plus perseverance or determination plus direction, then I think the only way to learn to be an entrepreneur is to do it. This is where I love working with the university, because you do need to read the books. You do need to listen. You do need to work with people around you in that academic environment. But we need to layer on this experiential learning. You need to take those practices that you read in a book and you need to put them into actual work. And then you supplement that again with a book. I mean, I always say, if you wanted to get really good at tennis, you wouldn't just watch tennis. You would go hit the ball against the wall. You would play some matches. Then you go watch some more. So similar concept. So we need to practice experiential learning. And then it's just starting, putting one foot in front of the other. And it is, again, ordinary feet plus ordinary feet, and doing that every day. And I would say that crossing the chasm from a corporate or a non-entrepreneurial or non-startup lifestyle and getting into it is actually that the chasm's shorter than people realize. And I had to make this choice in 2012. I had to leave a very good job in banking to become a full-time entrepreneur. And it's scary, and it was at the time. But I did a lot of work, and I went to my friends, I went to my mentors, and really thought, where do I want to enter? What sector am I passionate about? What would really drive me? And it really helped to be able to get through that with my friends and mentors. But taking that single step really helped. And then, yeah, just building your grit. I mean, getting out there. And once you figure out what your passion is, then persevering and really putting your head down. So I can say embracing that entrepreneurial mindset is incredibly important during these trying times. And then just a couple more examples of how we're really putting this into action at Stellenbosch University Launch Lab and how the university and Innovis are really supporting us. I want to put this out there again as experiential learning. And Tony Hsieh is an incredible entrepreneur. Another great book is his book called Delivering Happiness. He's the founder of Zappos. Incredibly interesting culture, doing really fascinating things, bought by Amazon, but still keeping this very startup entrepreneurial culture. And he said, learn by doing. It's great to have theory, but nothing replaces actual experience. One of the myths I want to bust in this whole thing as well is that you have to go all in as an entrepreneur. There's a lot of great entrepreneurs who did some work on the side. So you can keep your day job. Again, maybe you give 2-3 hours a week to a local startup. Maybe you start working with an incubator, an accelerator. You get to start seeing what that feels like and doing it in a low risk way. And I really recommend that. Give 2 hours a week to mentoring. And I'll show you some opportunities we have at Launch Lab as well for something similar, but you don't need to go all in. I'll put it that way. In order to practice, in order to get that experience, you can take a baby step into doing that. We're at Launch Lab, we're trying to pull together all these different pieces of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. The reason we're in Stellenbosch is because I believe this is one of the great knowledge regions in the world. I was fortunate to live in New York, Sydney, Amsterdam, spent a number of years in Silicon Valley and Palo Alto and San Francisco. And I do think that Stellenbosch, the Western Cape generally, but Stellenbosch specifically, has a better entrepreneurial ecosystem than almost any place I've seen in the world. And there's a lot of things that you need in order to make that whole system work. And it's not just risk capital. It's not just great ideas. It's not just mentors. It's bringing these things all together. It's having the resources of the university. And the thing I think that people don't really take into account is this risk-taking support. So my second startup, my first one did pretty well. My second one failed miserably. But living in San Francisco, everyone said, cool, like good work. Congratulations, get up, learn something and do it again. And so I do think we need to embed that risk-taking culture that it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fail. Failure is only failure if you don't learn from that experience, but you're either succeeding or you're learning is the way it comes down to it. And I think at Stellenbosch University Launch Lab, we want to create this little pocket of risk-taking and give people the chance in a de-risked manner to give it a go. And if they fall down, if they scrape their knee, we're there to help pick you up. We're there to help push you along in that entrepreneurial journey. But that's something that's really, really critically important. And so what do? We actually think of ourselves in a lot of ways as entrepreneur as a service. We have a 7-person team of experienced entrepreneurs. We're doing a number of things across the entrepreneurial journey. And I really do believe it is a journey. So first of all, we try to inspire. We try to get people thinking about, well, what is entrepreneurism? That can be done through a webinar, through an informational talk, through something that is more socially impact, like women in entrepreneurism or social impact within entrepreneurism. We do office hours. We have Launch Lab tours. We're now running fellowships and internships. So we have, right now, we have 4 different fellows who are working with our team. They're all varsity students, either MBAs or postgrad, whatever else, and they come work with us. And they help us build our company because Launch Lab is a startup as well. Or we have internships. What if you can go and work 2 or 3 hours with a startup company and get to see what that feels like? Every startup needs a lot of human capital, throw some smart people at a problem. So we have lots of smart people. We have companies that need them. It's really a great symbiotic relationship there. And then if we have piqued your interest, then how do you build something? How do you get your hands dirty? So we offer things like hackathons, student pitch competitions. We're doing a 3-day design thinking workshop. We have Build. Build is an 8-week design thinking based curriculum that basically you come in with something. I have an idea. Is it a business? And in those 8 weeks, you should be able to figure out, am I going to run with this thing further? Is there a market for it? Is it a product? Am I going to take this thing from idea to company? And then we have Countdown. Countdown is a 6-month online and in-person course where I have a business. I really want to take it to the next level. How do I put the I don't want to say that the guardrails in place to make sure that I can grow this business. So we have 4 different pillars there. One is business development, product development, entrepreneur development, because it's very important to really focus on the entrepreneur themselves, and then what I call foundations for scale. So if you do go from 1 to 100 customers, do you have the right foundation in order to make that thing work at scale? And then, okay, so let's say we've inspired you, now you're building, and now it's time to really grow. So Countdown is our 12-month incubator. Countdown is open to this is now called Liftoff. I'm sorry, we're changing some nomenclature here, but Liftoff is our 12-month incubator. I have a business, I have some revenue, I have a small team, I have an interesting product. Now I want to take it to the next level of scale. And that really is in that still upstream in the entrepreneurial journey. We're probably getting you ready for Series A or to be working with a corporate or something along those lines. But we want to get you to a place where you are investable, or hopefully you're free cash flow positive and you never need investment, but that's a little bit harder to do at times. But that is really 12 months of getting you to that next level. And then we want to support you. So we have an incredible community at Launch Lab. We have hot desk space. We have what we call Orbit, which is our alumni community. And then in the community side, you're able to access all the webinars. You can get online learning. You can be part of the community, because one of the things we've learned is that it's hard to walk alone. Entrepreneurs need one another in order to say, hey, like, I made a mistake. Cool. So did I. Let's go walk together. I had this success. Okay, great. And I always say make creative mistakes. So the more that our community can come together, the more creative mistakes we can make. And then there is mentoring. And that's something I want to throw out there to all of you as well. And this is something to be done virtual. If you do want to help out, if you do want to give some of your expertise back, then we have an incredible mentor network. And I think this is really critical for early company success. And as I said earlier, one of the things to really focus on during the crisis is taking the focus off yourself and trying to help others. For me, that it really is the reason that I love building companies. That's probably non-altruistic, but I also love giving people the opportunity to put their skills to work. So at Launch Lab, over the next 5 years, we want to give at least 10,000 students an opportunity to be an entrepreneur. And that might not mean starting a company. It might just mean going to a design thinking workshop. It could be doing a student pitch. It could be doing an internship, but we want people to have a go at trying it and seeing how it works. We want to launch at least 20 businesses, if not more, across critical sectors like climate, agri-science, data science, medical, engineering. Very focused on that. We want to get more intellectual property and more great ideas out of the university. We want more of the research that's done to become commercial opportunities. So we're actively working with 4 tech transfer companies right now and hope to grow that even more. And then we want to grow revenue and grow jobs. For me, after working for 6 years in sub-Saharan Africa, my second company, we had 500,000 customers across 6 markets, delivering clean energy at as little as 15 cents a day to rural off-grid populations. And I really feel like that was an incredible social and great product to get to our customers. We had 1,200 employees and 2,500 contractors. And in a lot of ways, I think that employee base was almost more important than delivering clean energy to marginalized populations that really deserved it. Because spreading knowledge and spreading jobs is what we really need. And as Vim said, we're at, I think it was 30 or 32% before the pandemic. And I wouldn't be surprised if here and elsewhere in North America, if that's eclipsing 40% by the time we're done. So how do we go out and create jobs? And so the last thing here I'll just leave with, and really hope this is the beginning of a conversation, because we are really looking to take Launch Lab to the next level of scale. And there's tons of ways to get involved. As I said, most of the time at a startup, you just want to throw a lot of smart people at a problem and see what happens. So as alumni, you could help sponsor some of this student entrepreneurship engagement, give the opportunity for students to get involved. We do have to cover our overhead. So we administer a lot of these programs, but have to cover our own costs. So we are a startup still as well. You could work with an incubator. You could provide student entrepreneurs a stipend. You could invest in our companies, and primarily you could serve as a mentor. We offer a lot of these same opportunities to our corporate partners, to our investors, and to our individuals. I will give a little bit of a sneak peek. We are rebranding right now to become a bit more aligned with the university. On September 1st will be our go live with our new website, our new product offer, our new platform. We're really excited about the next phase of growth at Launch Lab. We're 5 years old, incubated 200 companies, raised over 250 million Rand for those companies. And that's just the beginning. I think there's so much more that we can do. And that really is our vision. And our vision is to make Stellenbosch the world's go-to destination for what we call globally conscious startup activity. If we do our jobs well, then I want, wherever you're sitting, if you're in San Francisco or London or Prague or wherever, in 5 years, we want you to look up and say, if I want to do the hard thing, if I want to build a company that matters, I have to go to Stellenbosch. That is the place where I'm going to have the highest probability for success to build a tangible product with great people. So that is our big vision, is we want to draw people to this incredible knowledge region and really put it on the map, and even more than it is already for entrepreneurism. So I'll leave you with the idea that together we can transform seemingly impossible into world shaping. Really believe that embracing these lessons of entrepreneurism will help us all reframe the adversity that we're going through right now into the opportunity, and really have an opportunity to step back and then move forward in an entrepreneurial manner. So thank you so much for the time. I know we'll take some questions now, and I'll definitely make this presentation available to everyone.
Thank you, Josh. Wow, that was quite interesting, and thank you for that detailed input. I think if there are questions, there's a chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. If you could just type your question in there, that will make it easy for us to facilitate the questions to Josh. Perhaps there's some point of clarity you wish to know, something that piqued your interest, perhaps some around the mentorship aspect, the funding aspect that Josh talked about. But from my side, whilst colleagues and our guests are typing their questions, Josh, I wanted to ask you, I've read a lot about this crisis, this COVID crisis, and the 2008 crisis. So perhaps from your experience, having been on Wall Street and in New York at the time, what's different now versus then, particularly when it comes to kind of the funding landscape for entrepreneurial ventures? Do you have an opinion on that? What's your thoughts? Whilst others can just type their questions in the chat bar, and I'll take those as well. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. 2008 really was a liquidity crisis. So it wasn't so much a crisis, a pandemic or something like that. It was really just the global system shut down. We really looked at it as, okay, if I don't trust you and you don't trust me, then there's no lending. Then really the grease of the system just went away. So it was a crisis of liquidity. So I think it was relatively, I don't want to say easy, but it made sense for governments and for banks to step in to bail out the customer, to bail out the consumer. And so things did take a while to come back, but they came back. This is different, right? I mean, I heard someone say this is in some ways a mass extinction event. There are certain industries, there are certain professions that won't come back. I do believe we'll have somewhat of a U-shaped recovery. I personally believe there's going to be a lot that does come back online, but it is a new way to look at business models. And again, I come back to academia and say, the institution of academia is incredible, but there might be different ways to do this. I think that learning from going online, going virtual, we're going to learn a lot. So this interplay of, at the incubator, we do both online and in person. We watch something online, then you sit with a human, you fill out some paperwork and there's some deliverables in between. I think it's going to give us a lot of new insights on how to run these businesses. In Africa, I think it's forced us to step back and think about how we build our business. A lot of the lessons that have been adapted for entrepreneurism in Africa come from United States and Europe. And I do think building businesses is different. If you think about Silicon Valley, a lot that gets funded, a lot of the big businesses there are software based, and they are relatively high return on investment. They can change their business model very quickly. In Africa, you really do have to build the rails. There's a lot more complexity in the business model. And so historically, taking that model and really trying to raise a lot of funding to fund negative profitability has been the model in Africa as well. I think this is going to force us to rethink that model and force us to build businesses that are more stable and more cash flow positive early, which I think is actually very, very good. So if you look at the statistics, though, more funding has been raised for African startups this year than last year. So the funding isn't going away, and interest rates are at 0%. There's never been more money in venture capital. There's never been more money in private equity. All that money is looking for a home. So I actually think that there's way more supply than there is demand. There's not enough investable companies. If we can build investable companies, we will find demand. You'll find supply of funding. So different crisis, but I actually think in a lot of ways, one that offers even more opportunity.
Yeah. Interesting, because Julian's question in the chat refers to what you're alluding to around venture capital. Is there reasonable amounts available in South Africa? I mean, what's the view on that?
Yeah, it's South Africa's a unique market. I mean, I've lived in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Cote d'Ivoire, and worked a lot in that ECOWAS and Eastern Africa. And I would say those ecosystems, one, because of development finance, two, because of social impact, there is a lot of funding there in Nairobi and Lagos and in the like. South Africa it's a relatively difficult market because it is considered a middle income country. Even though we have the highest Gini coefficient in the world, there's not a lot of development finance here. There's not a lot of social impact. So I think it's harder to find that initial funding. The funding sizes and rounds are smaller. The venture capital universe is a lot more nascent. There's less European and US players. So I actually think that it's harder to raise good venture capital and good funding in South Africa than in the rest of Africa. With that said, the level of talent, especially in Stellenbosch is, with all due respect, far superior at the average level. I'm just finding, Stellenbosch University, very hands down is comparable to any university in the world, period. This is just an Africa thing. The people that we work with are as good as anyone that I've ever worked with at Stanford or the like. So we have this massive human capital, I think, dividend. How do we put that to work is really the question. And in a lot of ways, we can't rely on venture capital. We have to build businesses that can be fundable. We're building an angel network right now. For us, it's really about finding that it's only maybe 500,000 to 1.5 million rand, which in USD or euro is relatively small, but it's that amount of money to get companies going, to get them to the place where they can figure out product market fit. And this is where I finally think incubators can play a very big role. It can help you accelerate your pace of growth so that if you have less funding, you can get from point A to point B a lot faster. We can help you not make the mistakes you might make in other places if you were out on your own. So there's less funding, but I think that forces us to be more effective and more efficient. And that's why I think incubators play a big role.
Thank you, Josh. I hope that answers your question, Julian. I see there's another question, and it refers to a bit of what Prof. Wim talked about, Josh. In the past, students were prepared for a specific career, and graduates would spend their entire working lives at one or two companies. So these days, at Stellenbosch, I think Prof. Wim mentioned young people are being prepared for professions that do not even exist yet. And he sees entrepreneurship training as part of the solution. Can you perhaps expound a little bit on that in terms of the spark, the passion, the commitment, that sort of narrative that Prof referred to earlier? Because often we hear that perhaps unjustly so, that our students in South Africa more broadly are risk averse. And how do you think that this entrepreneurship training could perhaps play some role in this, if we are to go down this particular path?
I think it's absolutely critical. Even before the pandemic, there weren't enough jobs. Even for students coming out of Stellenbosch University, a top university in across Africa, there's just not enough jobs, period. So we need to be able to give people these skills. And I would think of entrepreneurism as a skill. These are techniques that are more of a vertical. So you're going to apply them to business or apply them to engineering or apply them to data science, but it is a learned path. It's very much something that there are techniques that you can learn. This is why I went back to business school, to figure out, is there a way to have a higher probability for success in entrepreneurism? And the answer is definitively yes. So I do think there's risk aversion. I do totally understand that. I'm a fourth generation American. My dad was a doctor. His dad was a fish salesman. His dad literally drove a milk cart. So, it takes generations in order to give you the foundation necessary to go out and take a risk. On the other side of that, what I see across sub-Saharan Africa specifically is this idea of survival entrepreneurism. There are a lot of entrepreneurs because people have already come around to the fact that the government's not going to provide for you, that there's not a job to be had. So you better get out and hustle. I think South Africa is starting to come around to that idea that you have to go make your own path and then you have to blaze your own path. And so I think that the university setting is the perfect opportunity. If you are risk averse, let's pair you up with a company. You put in 2-3 hours a week, see how it feels. If it goes nowhere, then nothing lost besides a little bit of time and sweat equity. And who knows, maybe we've planted the seed for entrepreneurs. Maybe you become, as I said, an employer, not an employee. But I think university is where we have to give people that shot to try entrepreneurism. And I would say for a lot of people, it may just be a seed that's planted. The age of the highest probability for success as an entrepreneur is actually 42 years old. So even if you decide I'm going to go take that corporate job, I'm going to do 10 years like I did at Credit Suisse or at Nedbank or wherever it may be, then you come back. And I really think that's critically important. And the last thing I'll say coming out of the pandemic is we're going to need to rebuild from the bottom up. It's not going to be a top-down government-led solution. It's going to be through entrepreneurs grabbing this thing by the bootstraps, getting creative, getting innovative, and being passionate about rebuilding South Africa and rebuilding our continent. And that's really what it's going to take. So we need to give students, we need to give our faculty that opportunity. And we feel like Innovus and Launch Lab and the university can really provide that spark and do it in a pretty low-risk manner.
Thank you, Josh. I know that we are running out of time, colleagues, and our guests. We just have one last question, which I will take. I think it's from Sue Linham. Sue asks, Josh, I'm curious about building fundable education models, not just business models. How to reperceive education models so that they remain viable in new and unimagined ways. And I think she's referring to not just by going online. What thoughts do you have around that?
Oh man, it's a broader conversation, but I love it. And again, I think this is where the world has become disjointed, right? And there is no opportunity to be on campus right now. So how do we rethink this model? And there are a number of fascinating ways to come about it. So I think it's a broader discussion, and I'll definitely get your email and we can have a bit more of that offline. But I would say the real big thing is that once you have that idea, then we can run that through a process. We can run that idea through an iterative process to figure out where does that idea go, what business model could be built around it. So whether it's ed tech or clean energy or whatever it may be, there's a process to figuring out how do we take this idea and turn it into something. So for that question specifically, I think it's a broader conversation, but I can say that there's entrepreneurial techniques to see if this idea really is a business. And one thing I would say as well is that hopefully when the pandemic lifts, not only because I'd love to see my family in the States at some point, but we hope to be coming to North America. And we hope to be able to come to many cities across North America and really sit down with everyone and talk about what we're doing and hear your stories as well. I really love to hear how all of you have come from Stellenbosch and found a home in North America and figure out how to create this linkage. The last thing I'll say is that one of the really critical elements of entrepreneurism is diversity and having everything at the table, whether that's green, black, blue, or yellow, having that all at the table. And we need to be bringing more of our students from Stellenbosch to Nairobi and to Lagos and to San Francisco and to Toronto. And we need more people from North America coming here and infusing us with that can-do attitude. I mean, one of the things I've always loved about North America is that positivity, is that idea that we can always build something, we can always make something. And so that opportunity to have these international exchanges and work with all of you is really exciting. So yeah, really thank you for the time and thank you for the great questions and hope to be working much closer with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's all we have time for, I'm afraid. So if I haven't got your question, my apologies for that. I just see that Sue says she's in Fort Collins, Colorado. So
I love Fort Collins. Yeah.
We should get there. We have a hub in Denver, Colorado. Nonetheless, thank you so much, Josh, and to Prof. Wim, who earlier gave us the introduction and grounded this whole discussion, and to Sarah for having that conversation, but particularly to you, Josh. I think you've inspired a lot of people, and I do want to continue these conversations at a later date. At this point, I think it's up to me to say we have recorded this, so if you would like a recording, please let us know in the chat box, give your email address if you've connected as a guest, and we'll absolutely send it to you. We'll also send it to our North American alumni and friends, so they would be able to also interact with it as well. So for that, we really, really appreciate your time. I think it's probably at 1 o'clock now in New York or thereabouts. So it's your lunchtime. Let me not keep you any further. It's now up to me to say thank you very much, and we look forward to having these virtual online engagements in the future. We've also had to pivot as the Alumni Relations and Development Division here at Stellenbosch, and with our partners Launch Lab, we were delighted to offer this talk to you. So thank you very much from all of us. If you do want to stay on a little bit on this call, you're more than welcome to, but we will stop the recording now for my colleague Hindu's sake, and we really look forward to engaging further with you in the future. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening here in South Africa, your morning if you're in LA, Nicholas, John, and of course for those in the East Coast or in Colorado, enjoy your afternoon. Thank you and goodbye.